Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4, entitled Vidura Approaches Maitreya. We're on text 19. It's January 27th, 2023. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesh Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yutamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Text 19, Chapter 4, Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, this is the follow-up book to Bhagavad Gita. All right. Iti Avedita.
Iti Avaedita.
Ardaya.
Ardaya.
Mayam. Sa.
Bhagavan. Para.
Adidesha. Aravinda Aksha. Atmana. Paramam. Stitim. Ityavedita Hardaya. Mayam sa Bhagavan Para. Adidesha Ravindaksha. Atmana Paramam Stitim. Ityavedita Hardaya. Mayam sa Bhagavan Para. Adidesha Ravindaksha. Atmana Paramam Stitim. Ityavedita Hardaya. Mayam sa Bhagavan Para. Adidesha Ravindaksha. Atmana Paramam Stitim.
Ityavedita
Hardaya.
Mayam sa Bhagavan
Para.
Adidesha
Ravindaksha.
Atmana Paramam
Stitim. Would anyone else like to recite the verse? And for those who joined in the past few minutes, we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4, Text 19. We'll go to the word meanings. Iti Avedita. Thus being prayed to by me. Ardaya. From the core of my heart.
from the core of my heart.
Mayam,
Mayam,
unto me.
unto me.
Sa,
Sa,
he,
Bhagavan,
the personality of Godhead.
the personality of Godhead.
Para, supreme. Adidesha, instructed. Aravinda Aksha, the lotus-eyed. Atmana, of himself. Paramam, transcendental. Stitim, situation. Translation. So this is Uddhava speaking to Vidura. Conversation happening about 5,000 years ago, just to give some context. So Uddhava is saying, when I thus expressed my heartfelt desires unto the supreme personality of Godhead, the lotus-eyed Lord instructed me about his transcendental situation. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The words paramam stitim are significant in this verse. The Lord's transcendental situation was not even spoken of to Brahma. When the 4 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text 33 to 36 were explained. This transcendental situation comprises his dealings with devotees engaged in transcendental loving service as exhibited at Dvarka and Vrindavan. When the Lord explained his specific transcendental situation, it was meant for Uddhava only, and therefore Uddhava particularly said, Mayam, unto me, although the great sage Maitreya was also sitting there. Such a transcendental situation is hardly understood by those whose devotion is mixed with speculative knowledge or fruitive activities. The Lord's activities in confidential love are very rarely disclosed to the general devotees who are attracted by devotion mixed with knowledge and mysticism. Such activities are the inconceivable pastimes of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. So I'm going to recite some mantras now to continue to invoke auspiciousness in our sangha, in our gathering. Om Gyanatimmirandasya Pinanjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanchakalpatya Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4, Text 19. Ityavedita Hardaya Mayam Sa Bhagavan Para Adidesha Ravindaksha Atmana Paramam Stitim. When I thus expressed my heartfelt desires unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the lotus-eyed Lord instructed me about his transcendental situation. Hare Krishna. Okay. So in the previous verse, I think Patrick at Prague gave a class on that text last weekend. And so Uddhava he's asking to Krishna to explain the Bhagavatam. So this is one of 30 volumes of the Bhagavatam. And so now he's narrating that whole thing to Vidura. And so yeah. So okay. So the Vedas, so the Vedas are compiled by a great sage, a pure devotee of Krishna named Srila Vyasadeva. That's the Veda. We can go to the Yoga Center, Vedas. Okay. So who wrote the Vedas? Now, the term wrote isn't exactly accurate. Sometimes I'll use the term transpersonal authorship. So this is revealed absolute vibration that conveys truth that is good, truth that is true in all time and space. That means absolute. It's not relative truth. Example we often use, I can say, I'm David Wolf. That's relative truth. Was I David Wolf a trillion years ago? Was I David Wolf from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania? Will I be David Wolf from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania a trillion years from now? No. So that's relative. Absolute truth. I'm not this body. I'm spirit, soul. I'm an eternal servant of God. Jivaras Hupoi Krishnera Nityadas Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Beta Prakash. Right. So the Vedas, this is it's transpersonal authorship revealed through Srila Vyasadeva. So he's the compiler, author of the Vedas. And so he wrote the Vedas, and then, as described in the first canto, he was still despondent. He was kind of morose, even depressed, because he had such compassion, and he wanted the people of the current age. He wanted the people of the current yuga, called the Kali Yuga. This is Kali Yuga. We're about 5,000 years into the Kali Yuga. It's just about another 427,000 years to go. And so he wanted the people of this yuga to really get it, right? To really get it. And he could see that the Vedas, there's complexity, and there's Vedas meeting certain people where they're at in different ways. But he said, like, they'll miss the point. And he had a conversation with his guru, his spiritual master, Narada Muni. Okay. All right. And so as a result, Anarto Pashaman Sakshat Bhakti Yugamat Hokshaji Lokasya Janatad Vibhams Chakre Satvata Samhitam. As a result, Vyasadeva wrote the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam, you can say it's the sequel, the follow-up epic to Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so Bhagavad Gita describes very clearly Vedesh Chasavera Hame Vivedya, right? So the goal of all the Vedas, the goal of the Karma Yoga, the goal of the Jnana Yoga, the goal of Varnashram, the goal of meditation, the goal of Raja Yoga is bhakti, devotional service to Sri Krishna. Say, that's your opinion, David Wolf. Fortunately, it's not just David Wolf's opinion. So that's like, even why we recite those mantras at the beginning. Om Gana Tmiranda Shigananjana Shlakaya Chakshu Unnitamnina Tasmai Shugu Venamaha. Those mantras are they're purifying in themselves. And like, it's like my kind of prayerful attempt that whatever I speak, it's right now I'm sitting on a chair, but technically it's called the Vyasasan, because this is asan means seat. So because I was invited by Mother Malini to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam. So my role is to represent Vyasadeva, and I know Vyasadeva through my current link to Sri Krishna's disciplic succession, Srila Prabhupada. And so so my role is to represent Prabhupada, to represent Vyasadeva, and that nothing I say is just like, well, here's my opinion separate from them. In my style, my personality, to represent faithfully the absolute knowledge coming from the Vedas. Okay, so the goal of all the yogas, all the Upanishads, is devotional service to Sri Krishna, bhakti. Okay, we can look. There's the parts of Bhagavad Gita that talk about the physical yoga, the hatha yoga. How does that section close? Yoginam api sarvesham vadgitenan tratmana shradavad vajateyumam same yukta tamomataha. That of all the goal of the physical exercises is to be transcendental to the drives, the vagums of sense gratification, and devote oneself, the soul, fully to devotional service to Sri Krishna. There's the Jnana Yoga, the intellect yoga. So how does that section of the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita close? Bahunam janmanamante ganavan ram prapajite vasudeva savamiti samahatma sudulabha. So Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita. So those who are sincere on the path, they'll come to realize that Vasudeva, Sri Krishna, is the source of everything, and they engage in devotional service. So we can do that for any. There's many paths, and it's not just some mishmash, jumble. There's this and that, many paths, and they all lead to devotional service to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So this verse is spoken by Uddhava, and he's a realized master in bhakti. He's a realized master in bhakti yoga, and so this is about. So Uddhava is asking Krishna to explain to him Srimad Bhagavatam, just like he explained Bhagavatam to Brahma. And Krishna goes even further in explaining to Uddhava, further than when he went explaining would explain to Lord Brahma. So these are auspicious questions. Probably everyone here has heard me use one of my favorite analogies, the computer analogy, right? Like using a computer as a doorstop. Using a computer as a doorstop. And the point of that analogy is this human body. It's actually much more sophisticated. Even the simplest cell, even the simplest one-celled creature is trillions of times more sophisticated than the most sophisticated computer, okay, or chip or whatever. That's actually true. It's actually very true, right? So like, yeah, the biologists, the scientists, physicists, chemists, they're not even like, the more they'll discover something little about like a living cell, and then they'll just realize how much they don't know about the simplest cell. So the idea is like, okay, a computer can be used for very sophisticated functions, and if we use it as a doorstop, it's kind of a waste. Sure, it can be used as a doorstop. Similarly, so this human form, right? To quote Teilhard de Chardin, we're not human beings having spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having human experience. So in the human form, our special, I would say special opportunity, but really our responsibility is to inquire about the absolute truth, right? So so Prabhupada will often say, everyone's asking questions all the time. All species, right? The ants, the birds, the bees, they're asking questions around eating, sleeping, mating, sex life, fearing, defending. Okay. And so if that's all we do with our relatively sophisticated computer of the human form, if the nature of our questions are in glorified, sophisticated ways around eating, sleeping, mating, defending, what a waste! What a waste! Then that's like using the computer as a doorstop, okay? Because the special opportunity in the human form is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. We have the opportunity to ask questions of a quality, of a nature that the other species don't get. We can ask questions about spirit, about absolute truth. Atato Brahma Jigyasa means now that we have a human form, now's the time to inquire about these higher level questions. And okay, well, to skip to the conclusion here. So Uddhava, the speaker of this text in Bhagavatam, he's exemplifying this. This is Uddhava's inquiries to Krishna as he's describing to Vidura and the whole Bhagavatam. This is the ultimate stage of inquisitiveness. This is the highest objective for the inquisitive person, right? Where we inquire about that which we're interested in. Right? So then Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra, which is all the Vedas and codes. But people of Kali Yuga, we're not going to understand these codes. Atato Brahma Jigyasa, Janma Dyasya Tata, Ananda Mayobhyasat. Okay, what are we supposed to do with that? So then Vyasadeva the transpersonal author of all the Vedas. He's giving the explanation of the Vedanta Sutra in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he starts, Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses. And the first line of the first verse, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva. O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So that's Vyasadev's, that's his response to the question, to Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now's the time to inquire. So what should we inquire about? Devotional service to Sri Krishna. Satyam Param Dhimahi. I meditate on Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth. Satyam Param Dhimahi. This is the response, the explanation of Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Then, in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's what's called the seed verses. And that's mentioned in this purport. A few weeks ago, I led a class on this chapter, on a verse in this chapter, where the verse and purport also talks about the seed verses. So I talked about them a bit. And so in the seed verses, in the purports, Prabhupada talks a lot about this is the ultimate inquiry, right? Like, what's the nature of the self? What's the nature of the absolute? And in its most complete aspect, the absolute is personal. The absolute is personal, right? Just like we have senses. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved. In personal calamity, thou hast moved. That's a poem, a couplet of a poem written by Srila Prabhupada. And he's establishing there in a poem offered with love and devotion for his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. Prabhupada's establishing absolute is sentient. Sentient means possessing senses. Possessing senses. Senses means there's some things I'm attracted to and some things I'm not attracted to. Absolute sentient, thou hast proved. In personal calamity, thou hast moved. Right? Because if in our attempts at spiritual life, if we stop at detachment from material desires, and we don't get a sense of what's it mean to awaken our spiritual desires. So we have desires, we have senses. There's things we like, there's things we don't like, things our eyes are attracted to, things our skin, things our tongue are attracted to, things like that. So that propensity is there because the absolute, the substratum of all existence, it's not nothing. It's not the undifferentiated white light. It's not matter. It's not atoms. If we get to the core of the core, the substratum of all existence, that's Vasudeva, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So that God is a person. We have personhood. How? Janmadhyasya yataha. That's the second aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra. Janmadhyasya means whatever exists in the effect must be there in the source. So we have activities. We like to relate. Right? We're all looking for bliss in relationship, and we're all frustrated in that attempt. We're all looking for bliss in relationship. We're all frustrated in that attempt. Okay, but we can see we're all looking for knowledge. We're all looking for bliss. We're all looking for happiness. We're all looking to serve someone or some cause. But that's the nature of the soul, to relate, to be chit potency, to gather knowledge, to expand in knowledge. And so as long as we try to get the satisfaction through material relationship, material activity, material communication, we'll be frustrated. It's like the self, the soul won't be satisfied. Just like it's like if we take care of the car, but the driver of the car doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't get water, the driver's not going to be satisfied. Okay. So this Bhagavatam, this is the science, how to take care of the driver of the car. And the short response to that is bhakti, right? Nityasiddha Krishna prema sajika bunoi shravanadi shuddha chitte karye udai. That love of Krishna love of Krishna is eternally situated in the hearts of all living entities. And that's why even this bhakti yoga, this is so foreign to me. I didn't grow up with this. This is so different than the culture I'm familiar with. It's strange. Same time, how come it feels like coming home? How come it feels like coming home, right? Because this love of Krishna, this bhakti lata bij, it's eternally situated in the heart of all living entities, Shuddha Chitte, Shravanadi, Shuddha Chitte, Karya Uday. And that bhakti, that love of Krishna, it's awakened. The diamond is cleansed. The love of Krishna is awakened through this process of hearing and chanting, especially chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There's one Vaishnav poet, and he wrote a song, Prabhupada quotes on, Hare Hare Bipale, Janama Gunainu, Manusya Janama Paya, Radha Krishna, Na, Radha Krishna, Na Bajia, Janya Sunya, Bisha kind of. And he says, I've got this human form, I've got this precious gift, special opportunity. It's more than an opportunity, it's actually our responsibility to inquire about the absolute truth. Right? And again, this bhakti yoga, this is the ultimate stage of inquiries, and that's where Uddhava is at in his inquiries. So the Vaishnava poet says, and I've wasted my life by not serving Radha and Krishna. And this is like I'm knowingly drinking poison, right? We sometimes say, right? Like resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. And then we die, like we're drinking acid, we're drinking poison. So to have the human form of life, especially coming in contact with this most sublime process of bhakti yoga, and then to not, fully embrace it. It's like knowingly drinking poison. I'm reminded here, there's a text, there's a Maharaj Rishabhadev, a long time ago, and millions of years ago. Yeah, he spoke to his many sons headed by Bharat. And he said, Nayam deho deham bhajam niloke kastan kamam mahati vid bhujamye. Tapu divyam puchaki inasanvatham shudyadhyasman brahma sakyam tvanantam. So what he says there, kind of a heavy verse. Well, it's a very joyful verse, depending, where we enter it. But so he says that Nayam deho deham bhajam niloke. He says to his sons, like, look, as human beings, and his sons were leaders, they were like world leaders. And he says, as human beings, don't settle for the sorts of gratifications. Don't settle for the sorts of gratifications that are available to the stool eaters, vid bhujamye, the hogs and the dogs. No criticism of animals. Each species has its special function in God's creation. But he's saying, but for human beings to settle for that so-called happiness, he said, it's like embarrassing. It's like embarrassing. Rather, he suggests, tapu divyam puchaki inasanvatham shudyadhyasman brahma sakyam tvanantam. So what he's saying is here, rather, in the human form, voluntarily do austerity. Right? All humans are doing austerity, in case we haven't noticed. Maybe it's going to a job that I don't like, but I'll get some money, or studying for many hours instead of just partying all the time to get a college degree, or getting up early to do meditation, even though my mind says just sleep for another 4 hours. Or everyone's doing austerity. Animals don't do austerity, like at least not voluntarily. It means like time to eat, I'm gonna eat. I feel like having sex, I'm gonna have sex. Okay, time to sleep, going to sleep. Okay, time to defend, going to defend. So Maharaj Rishabhadev, he's saying, no, to voluntarily give up immediate gratification, yehi samsparsha jamboga, dukkhi unai evate, jantavanta kontena, teshu amate Buddha. Rishabhadev, Krishna is saying there, a truly wise person doesn't seek their fulfillment in the contact of the senses with the sense objects, whether it's a sense of touch, taste, smell, vision, auditory sense, or its subtle senses of like the mind's desire to be adored or something like that, right? Ego, material ego. No, wise people don't take pleasure in that, because It's probably, it's like, it's fifth class pleasure. It's fifth class pleasure. So everyone's doing austerity. The question is, what do we do? What's the goal of our austerity? Right? So like maybe a business person, I'm going to work 18 hours a day for the first 2 years, and I'll be a multimillionaire. Okay, so I'm going to get these degrees, and then I'll be respected as a smart person. So Rishabhadev is saying, you do austerity, give up immediate gratification in order to do bhakti, in order to experience shudyad yasmad brahma sakyam tvanantam, in order to experience the ever deepening, ever experiencing bliss of the soul, awakened to itself of the spirit soul, and turning in a devotional attitude to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So that's an ever increasing bliss. That's spiritual intelligence. That's spiritual intelligence. And to the extent that we indulge in bodily pleasures, it's a choice, then that's going to the more we're addicted to material pleasures, the more we're entrapped by material miseries, whether in depression, fear, anxiety, the more we're addicted to material pleasures. And so the good news about bhakti is there are spiritual pleasures. There are spiritual pleasures that far surpass by trillions and trillions the experience of joy available even in the greatest material pleasures. It's Prahlad Maharaj describes Yanmai Junadi Griyamedi Sukam Hitucham Kandu Yanena Harior Eva Dukka Dukam Chupyanti Neha Kripana Bo Dukka Bajo and Duninam Manisi Jam Bishahita Dhira. He describes it like the sex impulse. It's like an itch. It's like an itch. Like if we scratch an itch, it can be relieving momentarily, but then it kind of flares up even more. So he's encouraging us to resist scratching the itch, and engage that energy in bhakti, and experience the bliss of the Atmaramas. Actually, because we said this text of Bhagavatam is spoken by Uddhava, and really it's spoken by Shukadev Goswami, if we go back another cycle. So it's described about Shukadev Goswami, that he's the quintessential Atmarama. Atmaramas chamunayo nirganti apyu krame kravanti hetu kim bhakti mitam bhuta itam bhuta guno hari. The Shukadev Goswami, he was completely free of material desires, right? He was absorbed in the bliss of the oneness of all energies of the absolute, right? So he's not attracted to like material soap operas or harlequin romance novels or any adventures of the material realm. Yet, in wandering in the forest, he heard some verses from the Bhagavatam about the pastimes of Krishna, and he was attracted. That means the pastimes of Krishna. These are not material. The pastimes we describe here, Vidura, Maitreya, Krishna, these are not material. These are spiritual pastimes that are nourishment for the soul. Right? Otherwise, Shukadev Goswami or Uddhava, Lord Chaitanya, the six Goswamis, they wouldn't be attracted there. They wouldn't be attracted there. So the verse in the text makes the point that because Uddhava is so pure in his love for God, right? What could be a higher goal of life than personal love for Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead? Right? And that's what's encouraged here in the Bhagavatam. So that Krishna revealed to Uddhava more than he revealed to Brahma. And in one sense, that's natural. It's described about spiritual life. That Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Patipatam Purnam Vitashvadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. It's ever expanding, right? Material pleasures. Well, one point is that they're not satisfying for the self. Okay. Like that's one point. Just like, sure, like we want to keep the car clean and we want to put gas in it. and make sure the windshield wipers work. We don't want to neglect the car. But by cleaning the car, the driver's not intrinsically satisfied. It is the driver's responsibility to care for the car. It's our responsibility to care for the material body. It's like a vehicle. And another thing is that it's like the material pleasures, they're the law of diminishing returns, to bring in some economic theory here, with the law of diminishing returns. And so examples we use sometimes, let's say we're hungry. Okay, so like that pizza, yeah, whoa, that's amazing. That's amazing. It's just the type of style of pizza that I so like. Second piece, wow, even better. Third piece, yeah. Fourth piece, yeah. Okay. So anyhow, we all have our numbers, but let's say if I get maybe around the seventh piece, like this actually isn't as enjoyable as the first piece. Eighth piece, well, to be honest, it's getting a little painful. Ninth piece, how much will you pay me to eat the ninth piece? 10th piece, oh my God, this is getting. So we need to decide, is pizza good or bad? Well, it was really good at first. It was great. But it's getting less good. It's getting less good. Okay. So that means it's relative. It's relative. The law of diminishing returns. So it's the same for any material pleasure. Any material pleasure. But spiritual pleasure, it's it's ever increasing. Ever increasing. Okay. And I have just a glimpse of a drop of a thousandth of a drop of realization. But I can say, studying Prabhupada's books, chanting Hare Krishna, discussing Bhagavatam, I'm getting more and more joy from it than each year of my life, going back more than 40 years. So I have some drop of experience. So Krishna describes Bhaktimam Abhijanati Yavinyash Chasmi Tatamam Tatpatogyatva Vishate Tadanantram. Krishna says, only by Bhaktimam Abhijanati, not by Gyan, not by karma, not by exercises. Of course, all these other processes, they have their place. But to use an analogy, I don't know if this analogy will be appreciated, but like, okay, so like, let's say there's the emperor or the king. Let's say there's the emperor or the king. Okay. All right. So now, and then there's the queen. So we can say the king's all powerful, but we all know, at least in many instances, oftentimes the queen is actually more powerful than, she has influence on the king. Sometimes she's more powerful than the king. Okay, so that's an analogy. Okay, now the queen has her maidservants. Okay, so if we want to know the king, and the king represents Supreme Personality of Godhead, if we want to know the king, we could go to the maidservants, and the maidservants know something about the king. They probably clean his rooms and maybe they prepare his food. We could go to the maidservants. They know something. I want to know the king. We can make friends with the maidservants and they reveal something to us about the king. And yeah, there's some validity to that. But the maidservants, they don't have a trillionth of the intimate understanding of the king that the queen does. So the maidservants are those other paths, jnana yoga, impersonal meditation, Raja yoga, hatha yoga, these other paths, they're like the maidservants. So we can get some connection with the absolute in the personal form. But the queen is bhakti. The queen, so Krishna is saying, you really want to know me? Approach the queen. The queen is bhakti. Right? Approach the queen. Give yourselves heart and soul like Uddhava is to bhakti. Okay. And again, in one sense, bhakti is more powerful than Krishna himself. He's sold out to those who are giving themselves with pure bhakti. And yeah. And so this Uddhava is talking about Krishna speaking Bhagavatam to Brahma. And you might say those seed verses, okay, the basic topics as I understand them basic topics in the 4 seed verses are Krishna as a substratum of all existence and source of all material energies existing beyond time and space, ahame vasam evagre. Right? Krishna, Maya, because if we experience something as not connected with Krishna, then we're wrong. Then it means we're in Maya. Maya means that which is not. So it's not. So if we see, that movie or that activity or that person, or that's Maya. No, everything's connected with Krishna. If to the extent that we're not realizing how something's connected with God, that means I'm in Maya, I'm in illusion. It's not that the thing is Maya. Okay, so that's like the second theme of the seed verses. Okay, now then the process of bhakti and the regulative principles of freedom, because whereas sure everything's Krishna's energy. An example many of you have heard me use, like we say, what is the vodka in the vodka bottle? It is God's energy. So therefore, basic logic, the more vodka I drink, the closer to God I become. Not necessarily. Okay. So true, everything's God's energy. So the art and the science of real spiritual life, not fluffy, sentimental spiritual life. The art and science of real spiritual life is cultivating expertise in the art and science, how to relate to the different energies in such a way that myself and everyone connected with me is increasingly realizing God, realizing spirit in everything. And there's certain ways, like to use the vodka bottle, if I'm drinking the vodka, well, that'll probably increase my forgetfulness of who I am as spirit. So there's the regulative principles for there's just like rules of the road. Like we drive on, it's all the government, the right side and the left side, it's all the government. But if I drive on the right side, that'll support me to achieve my goal. That'll support me to achieve my goal. If I stop at a red light, then the red light, the green light's all the government's energy. But if I follow certain rules, it's not repressive. That frees me. It frees me to achieve my goal of getting to wherever I'm driving to, right? And so there's certain ways we can relate with the energy of eating, the energy of communication, the energy of sexuality, the energy of the energy of wanting to serve. We all want to serve. We all want to serve something bigger than ourselves. Okay, so there's ways we can direct that'll cause more of a mess with ourselves in the world, and there are ways we can direct that, to use a Bhagavatam analogy, learn how to serve the root of the tree, the substratum of all existence, that Sri Krishna, that we're blissful and everyone's blissful. So Krishna's, so the queen is bhakti. And the other paths, they're there to support the queen. They're not necessarily useless. The physical yoga and like that, the jnana yoga, varnashram, they're there to support the queen, but the queen is bhakti. So we're encouraged by Vyasadeva, by Srila Prabhupada, by Uddhava. Yeah, serve the queen, serve bhakti, immerse yourself in bhakti. And we hear from A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, here's practical guidelines for you today. Here's practical guidelines for you today to give yourself to this process where it's like we give ourselves to one moment, to bhakti. Chant Hare Krishna, give oral reception to Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and that's for our eternal benefit. And anything we do materially, tattva swadharmam bhajatam, tattva swadharmam charanam bhujam hare. Bhujana pakvota, tatota yatrakvava bhajamamura mushikim, pravarta arto bhajatam swadharmata. Narada Muni, a great bhakti yogi, he asks rhetorically, like, okay, and let's say if you or anyone, if we make some progress in any material field, okay, well, it's all washed away by the tides of time. Right? Even if we accomplish it, it gets crushed by time. And we as eternal spirit souls, we won't be satisfied by that. Never. We won't be satisfied by that. So, so Krishna is revealing to Uddhava here. even more than revealed to Brahma, he's revealing about the nature of the personal relationships and loving devotional play with the personality of Godhead. What he gave to Brahma in the seed verses is the foundation, and now he's revealing more to Uddhava. The nature of spirit is to expand. It's not that Brahma doesn't have that realization, because in other places we know, like Brahma, he gets a whole vision of the buildings and structures and relationships and color and form of the spiritual world. And he's described as Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Shanta Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundarama Chintya Gunasvarupam Govindamadi Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is Shamasundar Krishna himself, possessing innumerable transcendental attributes and qualities, in whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eyes of devotion tinged with the salve of love. Okay, so this is very personal, right? So just like we, as persons, to those who've gained our love and trust, we naturally reveal themselves. We reveal ourselves more and more deeply and intimately. So Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, Krishna is like that. Okay, so I'm just noticing the reflection here. The bhajan by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, window to the spiritual world. Right? We don't want to be satisfied in spiritual life just to negate the material. What's the window to the spiritual world? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Right? Radha and Krishna in the groves of Vrindavan. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari. So Krishna, the person of Godhead, lifting the Govardhan hill out of love, loving, playful devotion to his friends and associates, and the cows and the cowherd boys and his father and mother and their friends, lifting Govardhan hill out of loving protection. So we have activities, we have pastimes. How can we deny that to God? And the nature of God's pastimes, the nature of Krishna's pastimes, is completely transcendental. And by hearing about his pastimes and entering into Krishna's pastimes and the pastimes of Krishna's pure devotees, like Srila Prabhupada, then our hearts become purified. And we go, and we're satisfied only with the shadow pastimes, then we get stale and stagnant, and it's a source of unending anxieties. Okay, I've spoken a few things there, related to this verse spoken by Sri Uddhava. I'll read the verse again, then I'll be glad to hear if anyone wants to share any comments or inspirations or realizations, or ask any questions. So to bring closure to this class, and just as we enter into our discussion, this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4, Text 19, spoken by Uddhava to Vidura. Ityavedita hardaya mayam sa bhagavan para adidesha ravindaksha atmana paramam stitim. When I thus expressed my heartfelt desires unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the lotus-eyed Lord instructed me about his transcendental situation. Hare Krishna, thanks for your presence. Thanks for giving attention to Srimad Bhagavatam. I welcome any comments or questions.
I have a question about something Prabhupada says in the purport about Lord Brahma and Uddhava. Because even from the verse that you quoted, Lord Brahma was revealed all the most intimate pastime of the Lord and form of the Lord and abode of the Lord, paraphernalia of the Lord. Just the verse that you Premanjana and most of the verse of the Brahma Samhita, the one we sing every morning during the morning program, they turn to reveals something different. And so, like here, it spoke specifically about those 4 verses. And, I wonder, like if there is maybe some specific about what Srila Prabhupada say, or qualifying about the knowledge that Krishna gave to Brahma or Krishna gave to Uddhava.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you, Malini. Yeah, so it seems here, as you said, that it seems that Uddhava is referring to Krishna speaking to Brahma, particularly the 4 nutshell verses. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, the Lord's transcendental situation was not even spoken of to Brahma, when the 4 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2.9, 33 to 36 were explained. So Prabhupada's not saying that Krishna never revealed that transcendental knowledge of the personal relationships in Goloka to Brahma, but when he explained the 4 verses, they were not explained about the pastimes in Dvarka and Vrindavan. So that's, and we do know from other passages that Brahma certainly had insight and realization into the transcendent color and form and beauty of spiritual relationships in Goloka, in other places where Krishna revealed to him. Thank you, Malini.
It's interesting because the 4 seed verses, they are seed to sprout into the Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
And the Bhagavatam include the 10 canto and Krishna book and Krishna's past. Yeah. So it's just, you say Krishna, Maya, Krishna's energy, and the 4th one?
Oh, okay. I probably forgot to mention it. The 4th topic of the seed verses is Achintya Beta Beta Tattva. That's my understanding. Basically how all the energies are Krishna and how they're not Krishna. That's the 4th theme that I pick up. I don't have any claim to great realizations, but that's the themes I pick up. Back late in 2021, in our morning Bhagavatam class, we were studying those verses for several weeks. So yeah, Krishna, Maya, Bhakti, and Achintya Beta Beta Tattva. And just for those who might not be familiar, Achintya Beta Tattva, it's very succinct, but it's the most sublime philosophy I've encountered. You might say, well, what is the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita? And we could explain that in a course that takes 10 years. We could explain that in thousands of pages. But if we want to explain it in a brief Sanskrit aphorism, the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is Achintya Beta Beta Tattva, which means inconceivable and simultaneous oneness and difference. So Krishna, he shines the light on that in the seed verses. The example that Prabhupada uses often is like the sunshine. Okay, so yeah, so let's see where are we? Yeah, you're most of you are there in Florida. Some of us are here in Europe. Hello, Ananta Shakti. Good, glad that you're with us. Okay, so for some of you, maybe just 2 hours ago, right? The sun's coming into your home. For some of you, like their gallery in Utah, maybe it's just about sunrise now. Here, it's about 3 p.m. Malini gave a nice Chaitanya Charitamrita class the other day about how Krishna's appearance is like the sun, right? It's always noon somewhere. So Krishna's always playing with his cowboy somewhere in some appearance in the material universe. So let's say the sun's rising, and we might say, oh, the sun's coming into my room. So that's true, because the sun rays are non-different from the sun. And they're different philosophies. Some philosophies say, I am God and you are God. We're all God. We just forgot. And so in one sense, it's like ridiculous. It's like nonsense, but it's not, there's truth to it. There's grains of truth to it. Okay? The sun rays are non-different from the sun. At the same time, if I say the sun's coming into my room there at 7 a.m., it's not, I'm not saying like the sun globe is in David Wolf's room. Okay, no, the sun globe is like 1.4 million times the volume of the Earth planet. It's not in my room. So in some ways, the sun rays are quite different than the sun. They're the same in the sense they also emanate heat, like the sun emanates heat. They emanate light, like the sun emanates light. But the sun rays are not the sun globe in every respect. Similarly, that we're energies. We're like sun rays. We're like the sun rays of Krishna, but we're not exactly like Krishna. But we're not completely different either. Just like Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, eternally full of bliss and cognizance in eternal form. Similarly with us, the spirit soul. It's like so there's many similarities like that. And so how is everything, including material energy, spiritual energy, the jiva souls that are us, how are we like Krishna and different than Krishna? Well, that's where the achincha. Achincha means inconceivable. Inconceivable doesn't mean we can't understand and we need to blindly accept. No, doesn't mean that. Inconceivable means we need, in order to realize how all energies are one with and different from Krishna, we need a different epistemology than material mind and senses and material intellect and the classic empirical inductive method. And that the technical name for that alternate epistemology is bhakti. Bhakti. By serving, just like when we serve each other and we gain each other's love and trust, then we reveal ourselves to each other with deeper intimacy. So similarly with when we serve Krishna, the personality of Godhead, when we serve Krishna in humility and under the guidance of Krishna's pure devotee, sometimes Krishna says, one who sees himself as my devotee is not my devotee. One who sees myself as the devotee of my devotee, he's my real servant. So I endeavor, I'm a mass of festering material ego, but I endeavor to see myself as the servant of Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee of Krishna. And I know if I'm pleasing Prabhupada, I'm pleasing Krishna. I know that for sure. So we serve Krishna with love and devotion, then Krishna reveals himself. Then we get more and more realization of the vodka in the vodka bottle, how the energy of eating, the energy of sexuality, how the energy of the whole universe, how everything is connected with Krishna and is non-different from Krishna and simultaneously different. And we get more and more realization of how to relate to the different energies of God in a way that actually brings us to deeper remembrance of who we are as spirit soul servants of God. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, realizations anyone would like to share, ask, or express at this time? Okay, I'll read the verse one more time. Itya Vedita Hardaya Mayam Sa Bhagavan Para Aditeshara Vindaksha Atmana Paramam Stitim. When I thus expressed my heartfelt desires unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the lotus-eyed Lord instructed me about his transcendental situation. And again, I'm just noticing very sweet personal term, the lotus-eyed Lord, right? The lotus-eyed Lord, right? So just very sweet, beautiful descriptions. And we become attached to these spiritual spiritual beauty. Then more and more, we get that higher taste of the soul awakening to its original nature in bhakti. And we lose the taste for pale material pleasures as we get, because the nature of the soul is to be attached and to be dependent. That might not be a popular thing to say because so much, including in our seminars and coaching, just be unattached, be non-attached, be independent. True. And the nature of the self is to be dependent and attached. And so our choices, so to the extent that my unavoidable propensity for dependency and attachment is directed in the healthy way to spiritual dependence, spiritual form, spiritual sound vibration, spiritual relation, spiritual books, spiritual service. That's liberation. That's freedom. That's freedom. Then I'm free. I'm free from the bonds. I'm free from being a puppet of the material modes of nature. So much of what goes in the name of freedom these days means be a complete slavery to your senses. Be a complete slave to your senses in the name of freedom. And then we're slaves of the anxiety. Bayam Jitiya Binivesha Tasyat, the root cause of all anxiety, misidentification with the spiritual self, with the temporary material body. And so then I'm a slave to the anxiety and the envy and jealousy that comes from indulging in material sense gratification. I'm remembering there was a video of Prabhupada's life, came out like in the late 70s, shortly after Prabhupada passed away. It's called Your Ever Well-Wisher. Anyhow, in that video, they have an interview with this like big Indian magnate, like billionaire. His name was Nachi, and he had relations with Prabhupada like that. And Nachi was describing, he said, yeah, well, when I meet someone, I'm trying to find their fault. I'm trying to find their weakness, right? Like what are they attached to? He said, then I can exploit it to get profit from them. Like, are they envious? Are they attached to being popular? Are they attached to being famous? Are they greedy in some way? And once I find that weakness, then I can take advantage of it in the business. He says, so yeah, I don't know the details, but maybe Prabhupada was looking to do some sort of like get some land from this business. So Nachi was describing, yeah, so this Bhaktivedanta Swami, I had many meetings with him, and Nachi's like, he's loving Prabhupada, but you can also see he's like frustrated. But I couldn't find any fault in him. There wasn't a tinge of lust, wasn't a tinge of envy, wasn't a tinge of greed like that. And then at some point I just gave up, and I thought, this is really this is the real thing. This is the real saintly person. So as long as we have any material lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, then we're setting ourselves up to be victims of the material energy. We're setting ourselves up to be exploited by others. And our goal is to exploit others to fulfill that lust, that envy, and the greed. So transferring the propensity to be dependent and attached spiritually. That's the science of bhakti. It's not world rejecting. It's a world embracing process, right? How to use all our energies in bhakti. Then we become free from material desires. Bhukti mudisri kami, sakaliya shanta. Krishna bhakti nishkama ateva shanta. Then there's a peace. Then there's a peace. Then we're not pulled and pushed by lust, anger, greed. Hare Krishna. Jai, thank you for your presence and association. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.